Humans are creatures very much bound to the present, and by present, I do not mean the immediate moment or some expanse of time, including broader moments on a timeline, but human life itself. We dwell on it, cling to it, and though we continually fail to do so, attempt to extend the present that is our life beyond its allotted time with all manner of artifice and trickery. We are preoccupied with the moment that we call life, this incredibly diminutive unit of time that inevitably outruns us all. And none of this should surprise us. We evolved, after all, as all animals do, to survive long enough to pass on our genes within even shorter frames of time than we currently enjoy. Geological time, cosmic time are things fundamentally incomprehensible to us. And though we do our best to ascribe measurements to them, such grand scales of time are fundamentally inscrutable to us. And therefore, we rarely think about anything beyond the microscopic temporal units we call our lives. And thus do we crave this thing called legacy. I could invoke the etymology of the word legacy, but what's really the point of that? Far better it would be to speak of legacy in the sense that most people commonly think of it and use it. Most people, and specifically most men, since it is men who are typically most concerned with legacy, mean something that survives themselves, that is nonetheless of themselves, whether material, genetic, or even more abstract. Many men crave this thing called legacy. And legacy within this interpretation of its meaning is inextricably bound to memory. Of course, when we speak of memory, we necessarily mean human memory, since the type of memory required to honor the conventional notion of legacy would have to be sufficiently sapient and sentient. Someone who remembers you or your deeds seems to be the goal, the desire beyond the investment in legacy, something perhaps akin to an immortality project, a way of living past your allotted time. But the question then emerges as to whether or not that really makes much sense, since, based on probabilities, the likelihood that some version of you will actually persist past that allotted time is very small. You, as it were, will not be there to appreciate the memory, reverence, or respect someone paid to you at all. You will be gone, whether someone holds vigil over your past soon-to-be-forgotten deeds or not, so why the concern? We'll return to that later. But for now, a lengthy, yet necessary detour. Much of this can be reduced to an externalization of the most basic of desires, the desire to reproduce. And temporary continuity of a sort is indeed preserved in reproduction, a legacy, if you will. Your children will share 50% of your DNA segments. Your grandchildren will share some 25%. Your great-grandchildren will share 12.5%. Your great-great-grandchildren some 6.25%. Your great-great-great-grandchildren some 3.125%. Your great-great-great-great-grandchildren some 1.6%, until, say, 20 generations downstream from you, assuming each subsequent generation successfully is reproduced, something that is by no means guaranteed, you arrive at a vanishingly small 0.0000096% of DNA segments shared. And if you go far enough downwards from the 20th generation, all sharing of DNA segments will cease, and your descendants will effectively be strangers in every way. But even if this were not the case, does this 20th generation descendant, or 50th, or 70th, know anything about you or care about you? And again, the far more salient question to be posed is, how is this then relevant to your long-deceased self? But maybe this isn't a question of just shared DNA. Maybe this is also about the continuity of your line. In a broader sense, the fact that it is continued from A to Z, unabated. Surely that trumps the percents and fractions of autosomal DNA. Every male alive on planet Earth can trace his lineage back to Y chromosomal Adam. His reproductively successful offspring then spread around the globe, founding their own populations, which can be traced back by means of haplogroup testing. Maybe you're a male of some subclade of haplogroup R1b, the most common Y haplogroup in Western Europe, which itself is a subclade of the greater group R, which likely emerged somewhere in North Asia about 25,000 years ago. How much time do you spend on a daily basis thinking about your haplogroup's founder, or the father to trump all fathers, Y chromosomal Adam? Do you owe them? Well, I suppose that's a matter of preference and interpretation, but do you think they had you on their minds when they went about their business in prehistory? But the continuity is there, and it's something, isn't it? You owe it to them and to yourself to continue their genetic legacy and yours, to contribute something greater that lasts forever, right? The Earth is approximately 4.54 billion years old, with the earliest direct evidence of life dating back 3.465 billion years. The first life forms on Earth were microorganisms, single-celled microbes from which we all ultimately descend. Between the first hard evidence of microbial life to the first emergence of eukaryotic life, some 2.7 billion years ago, life in one form or another has persisted until the present, though not without hiccups, some of which were closer calls than others. Take the Permian mass extinction event, for example, which, despite the name, was more akin to a series of events amounting to the greatest series of extinctions to ever befall the Earth. Within a brief 200,000-year period, around 252 million years ago, over 95% of marine life and over 70% of terrestrial life met their end. Rapid changes in temperature with multifactorial causes led to the near destruction of all life. And thus it is truly impressive to take inventory of the vast, primordial, and unbroken chain that leads to the present, that leads to you. It did take life 30 million years to recover from this, but it did so eventually. There were some close calls, but somehow, some way, they, our ancestors, made it. It's all about continuity, is it not? Despite genetic distance, assuming that they all survive, your descendants will be able to trace themselves back to you. Of course, you won't be there to take notice of that, but continuing unabated, assuming each successive generation of your providence succeeds in reproduction, at some point in time, eventually, that continuity will end. Why? Asteroid impacts of relatively large size, meaning asteroids of 3 miles or 5 kilometers in diameter, occur approximately every 20 million years. And even larger asteroids, 6 miles or 10 kilometers in diameter of the sort that led to the extinction of the dinosaurs, have occurred at different intervals of the past, with the one occurring 66 million years ago being the most recent. The mean time between such a large-scale impact is at least 100 million years, meaning that if such calculations are correct, sometime within the next 34 to 50 million years, there is likely to be another large-scale asteroid impact. The consequences of a sufficiently large asteroid impact would be manifold. A global environmental disaster would almost certainly ensue. Firestorms would rage across the globe after the initial impact. Then, fine dust would be ejected into the atmosphere, blanketing the Earth, lowering the surface temperature by 15 degrees Celsius, or 27 degrees Fahrenheit, within a week, preventing direct sunlight from reaching the surface, and therefore preventing photosynthesis for months to come, resulting in a nuclear winter, leading, of course, to the extinction of innumerable species, and rendering civilizational continuity highly improbable. But hey, maybe, just maybe, your descendants will be the lucky ones to make it. A supernova explosion occurs once every 40 or so years in the Milky Way galaxy, and once every few hundred million years one will occur within 32 light-years of Earth. Over the course of the next 2 billion years of Earth's existence, approximately 20 supernova explosions will occur, and one gamma-ray burst. Gamma-ray bursts result in the production of nitrous oxide, which causes damage and depletion to the Earth's ozone layer, and this can last hundreds of years. During this time, severe damage to Earth's biosphere will be assured, resulting in significant extinction of multitudes of species. But hey, maybe your descendants will be the lucky ones to make it. Our star, the Sun, began at only 70% of its present luminosity. Stars generate energy through the thermonuclear fusion of hydrogen to helium. As the hydrogen is consumed at its core to fuel its starbound life cycle, the total number of hydrogen atoms decreases, leading to greater energy output caused by nuclear fusion, which then leads to a decrease in pressure support, which in turn causes the core of the Sun to contract until the increased density and temperature bring the core pressure into equilibrium with the layers above the core. Elevated temperatures then cause the remaining hydrogen to undergo fusion at a faster rate, in order to generate the energy needed to maintain equilibrium. Because of this, the Sun's luminosity has increased in a near-linear fashion by approximately 1% every 110 million years. 3 billion years from now, its luminosity will have increased by 33%. And when its hydrogen-fueled core is completely spent, 5 billion years from now, it will be 67% more luminous than it is at present. Even after this, it will continue to burn hydrogen in a shell around its core until its luminosity reaches 121% of its current value, whereupon it will enter the red giant stage of its life. The ever-increasing luminosity of our sun will have a direct impact on the sustainability of Earth's biosphere. Once the sun's luminosity has reached 10% of its present value, average surface temperatures will reach 47 degrees Celsius, or 116 degrees Fahrenheit. This will lead to a runaway greenhouse effect that in turn will lead to the eventual evaporation of our oceans. This will result in profound geological disturbances, never mind disturbances to Earth's ecology. And to fast forward 2.8 billion years from now, Earth's average surface temperature will be 149 Celsius, or 300 degrees Fahrenheit, even at the furthest ends of Earth's poles. This will mark the end of all life on Earth as we know it, as nothing will be able to survive the climatic changes. All of Earth's biosignatures will cease. Of course, you and your line will have gone extinct long before this, since the conditions that would have supported eukaryotic or multicellular life will pass long before this has happened. But maybe, just maybe, your descendants will be part of the select few who, long before this, abandoned Earth to travel the stars. Maybe, through some unpredictable, unforeseen miracle of technology, humans, or something descended from us, will figure out some way to leave Earth. But to do what? Our solar system has no other habitable planets. Inferences based on our own solar system's model and our own planet's relationship to the Sun allow for informed speculation as to which planets in other solar systems within the Milky Way might be candidates for colonization, assuming they hold up to an Earth-like biosphere supportable standard. Mind you, these are simply informed inferences. That conditions might be similar enough to those of Earth and our solar system is by no means guaranteed that they actually are, and therefore, even assuming the capacity to explore this far, it will come down to dumb luck as to whether or not we would even find something viable. The nearest candidate is Proxima Centauri b, but it has issues. For one thing, it is part of a binary star system, meaning it has two suns. This results in dramatic and constant shifts of luminosity, ebbing and flowing at various intervals, making humanoid acclimation difficult at best. On top of that, it is unlikely to be habitable because it experiences solar winds at 2,000 times the strength of Earth, making the possibility for colonization for humanoids nigh impossible. Proxima Centauri b is 4.2 light-years removed from Earth, and would require 420 years of traveling at 1% the speed of light, which in and of itself is an incredibly ambitious speed to achieve and maintain. Luton b is the next best candidate. It is only 6% more luminous than the current luminosity projected onto Earth by the Sun, and so it seems promising. However, its orbital period, as well as its rotational period, is virtually the same, meaning one side is almost perpetually facing the Sun, whilst the other is almost never. This would create massive issues with heat distribution on the planet, making it highly unlikely that biotic life could be maintained, given the many prerequisites of equilibrium, both planetary and at the level of organisms. Luton b is 12.6 light-years removed from planet Earth, requiring 1,260 years to reach, assuming an ambitious travel speed of 1% the speed of light. In other words, it's not really looking good. What about intergalactic travel? There is the issue of time dilation, meaning that time moves faster at the point of origin than the traveling one and/or endpoint. From the reference point of Earth, traveling to another galaxy, say within the local group, which are defined as the galaxies that are gravitationally bonded to each other within our supercluster, it appears that within the Laniakea supercluster, the closest galaxy to ours would be the Canis Major dwarf galaxy. It is 25,000 light-years removed from Earth, which, assuming again we would be traveling at the ambitious speed of 1% the speed of light, would require a not-so-small 2.5 million years to reach. On a hunch that maybe, just maybe, there's something habitable out there, evidence for which there is none, as of the current date, and the same would apply to each and every other galaxy within our local group, all of which are more distant. Galaxies beyond the local cluster are consequently non-factors in terms of reachability, in any realistic sense, without bending the laws of physics, and due to the inflationary nature of the universe, some are impossible in every sense of the word to reach. But let's say, maybe, just maybe, through some miracle of sorts, your descendants are able to achieve that, and they are the lucky ones to be able to partake in such a feat. Problem solved, right? Not quite. Let us assume through this proposed miracle that your descendants are able to maintain an intergalactic civilization indefinitely. Well, even then there are problems. As mentioned earlier, All stars run through a life cycle, and eventually they all die, though they can go by different means. Some go white dwarf and then die, and some go supernova and then turn into neutron stars or black holes. The major point to be observed here is that at some point in time, trillions and trillions of years from now, all stellar luminosity will cease. There might be a few collisions of white dwarfs here and there that will produce some luminosity, but eventually they too will go cold. Now we are at the stage, 100 trillion years in the future, when there is not a single light left in the universe. There will still be planets, probably, but the likelihood that any will be sustainable without stars is slim to none. But maybe, just maybe, your descendants will be the vanguards who managed to figure out how to sustain life without stellar luminosity. However, there's an additional problem. Gravity itself is decaying, and in a quadrillion years, all planetary bodies in the universe will begin to be sucked into black holes or ejected into the oblivion of the expanding universe. When this process is done, all that will be left is black holes, which will be around for a very, very long time. But before even black holes go, and they will go, atoms themselves will decay and become unstable, resulting in baryonic matter, meaning all matter as we know it, changing into photons and leptons, or basically subatomic particles. At this stage, no new atoms will be able to be formed or will exist, because the nucleus of the atom has decayed out of existence. But maybe, just maybe, your descendants will be the brave, ingenious, and intrepid pioneers who will defy the need to be composed of matter. Eventually, though, even the black holes will be gone. After all the black holes have evaporated, after all the ordinary matter of protons has vanished, the universe will be nearly empty. Photons, neutrinos, electrons, and positrons will fly from place to place, hardly ever encountering each other. Gravitationally, the universe will be dominated by dark matter, electrons, and positrons. By this period, with only very diffuse matter remaining, activity in the universe will have diminished dramatically compared with previous periods, with very low energy levels and very, very large timescales. Electrons and positrons drifting through space will encounter one another and occasionally form positronium atoms. These structures are unstable, however, and their constituent particles must eventually disappear. Other low-level annihilation events will also take place, albeit very slowly. Eventually, after an incredible passage of time, the universe will reach an extremely low energy state, a state of absolute zero, empty, endless, cold, dark, unchanging, with nothing in it. This will be eternity, and no, your descendants will not be there. So it certainly is true, nobody will remember Karl, or me, or you, or your children, or your grandchildren, or their children, or anyone else for that matter. But that's not really the point, is it? Humans become ensconced in all matter of projection, which can sometimes map onto reality, but more often than not does not. Legacy is a vanity project, a useful illusion perhaps, but one that involves enormous self-deception, not only because legacy does not fit our understanding of the universe, but also because almost uniformly what motivates humans is the here and now and the present, where the present is defined as our lives. The things we do, the projects we undertake, we engage in because they are relevant to the continuity of our lives as they pertain to us. And when our lives cease, in the meaningful sense that we pursue it and perceive it to have, ceases to have any real relevance. What about posterity? As demonstrated prior, there is no long-term future of any sort for any life whatsoever. So when people speak about posterity, what they usually mean on an internal level are the living things that will immediately succeed them, perhaps their children and possibly their grandchildren. How many times have you heard the phrase, for example, I worry for the future of my kids and grandkids, versus the phrase, I worry for the future of my lineage 1,000 years from now, 50,000 years from now, 100,000 years from now, 1 million years from now, or I worry for the future of the collision of the Milky Way and Andromeda Galaxy 4.5 billion years from now. There's always a temporal proximity to oneself, even when humans do express concern and worry for the future or future generations. Virtually no one spends any significant amount of time dwelling on things far removed from their own time. And why should they? Even the most base of instincts can be reduced to this observation. Whilst it is true most people have children because of basic instincts that all organisms have, namely those which compel them to pass on their genes, with people subsequently explaining, justifying, and reifying that desire outside of the evolutionary window, in a pragmatic sense, people have children in order to create a tether to the here and now, to give their lives meaning that would otherwise be missing, predicated, of course, on the most basic of desires, passing on one's genes. Any thought or argument about some far-removed lineage is rendered null and void by the very fact that all the attention, care, and investment is put in life contemporaries rather than creating a so-called legacy. The legacy is an afterthought at best, most often used as a post hoc justification for reproduction, as opposed to the actual reason for it. And so it goes for virtually everything in life. Even traditions are maintained to give meaning to the living, though they stem from the past. We are creatures of the present in our concerns, so tethered in some sense to the past, and dimly concerned with the immediate future. So here's our dilemma. We're stuck, as sentient, sapient, finite apes, in a rather bizarre situation. We emerge out of the nothingness to return to nothingness, and must find some way to preoccupy ourselves, to keep ourselves busy in the meantime, as we wait out our departure. Doing just anything is insufficient because that with which we busy ourselves has to be meaningful in a human context, which is brief, bound to one lifetime, and always transient. Human civilization, immortality projects, and the like are houses built upon sand. And even if one attempts to justify finding purpose in the so-called greater-than-present equation, ultimately what appears to matter to each and every person is the here and now. Finding a way to while away the time between two unique points of oblivion, therefore, becomes the most crucial of human undertakings. And some people approach this in different ways. Some people pass the time by reproducing and raising children, some with different forms of work, and some still with other things. What matters is passing it in a way that is congruent with you, and that you find enough meaning to keep you going until you cease to be. And we find ourselves, in fact, at an incredibly odd point in time. Unlike planet Earth, where prehistory is incredibly old and history is young, we are at the beginning of the universe. In a blink of the eye, you and I will be gone. And not long after, Earth itself, followed by the slow but inexorable degradation of the universe itself. One by one, the lights will go out, until none are left. There will be no memories, for there will be nothing that can remember. No legacies, for there will be nothing that can receive such legacies. What matters, therefore, must be, of necessity, the here and now, not projections born of human ego and delusion. So, get married if that's what you want, or do not, if you do not wish to do so. Have children if that's your desire, or do not, if that's not your desire. What matters is that you're using your time in a way that is meaningful to you, since neither you nor humanity will survive. With that realization, make the moment count, for it is all we have. Thank you very much for watching. As this channel operates off of the generosity and contributions of its subscribers, please consider making a donation or becoming a patron. Any and all support is more than appreciated. If you liked this video, please like, share, and subscribe. And if you enjoy my content, please consider making a donation or becoming a patron. Thanks for watching.